Welcome to a movie review. My name's Andrew Worcester. Today's actually a TV series documentary that I'm going to talk about called The VOW, which is a story about a group called Nexium, which is a self-help kind of group that turned itself into a cult. And the reason why, for me, it became on my radar, the whole situation with them and who they are and what they were, was because of Allison Mack, who, if you know, was a member of the cast of Smallville, which was a show about young Superman Clark Kent growing up in his Smallville, Kansas. And that was a show back in like 2000 when it first came out that I was really into for a couple years. So when I heard her name linked to it, it's like, well, what's this? What's going on? And there's 3 episodes in. I think the 4th one is coming out tomorrow. So that's where I want to talk about it, because I wanted to wait till the story kind of developed a little bit before going into it. But it is something that's worth going into before the whole thing's complete, because there's a lot of different parts to it. This is 3 parts in. And it's basically the story so far anyway. It's a story of a group of self-help, self-improvement people who, this one guy, the head of it, his name's Keith, who has created a structure or a plan to kind of help get over fear or insecurity or limits that are in your head that you can't accomplish things, or that you can't get to a certain point. And it's very attuned to different self-help programs that you'll see out there. And some of the ideas and how they structure things, it's interesting, because the last couple of years, what kind of attracted me to the show, besides Allison Mack when I got into it, was the fact that over the last 5 or 7 years or so, I've got into that space a lot. I've, done a lot of self-help books. I've read a lot of them. I've listened to the teachers. I've watched the videos. I've participated in the programs. So there's a level to what they're talking about and what the Nexium started out to be that I understood. So watching that on some surface level, I didn't go to any retreats really. I did go to a seminar where I saw, with a group of people, 10,000 people or something, in a seminar for it. But it wasn't as intimate as some of these like retreats that they had, where you met, wasn't really interacting a whole lot with the people. So that's how it starts out with. And it seems helpful. It seems you see why they get into this, and you see why they like it. And then there's certain little parts into it that you kind of can excuse away, like come warning signs or red flags that you can excuse away just because of the helpful nature and what they're doing. And as much as they're telling you to not let your emotions control you, which I think is a good thing in most regards. But the counter to that is what they talk about later as it gets into it, was that, well, the emotions are there to protect you from danger, and that's your instinct, and you shouldn't necessarily completely ignore that. And that's the flip side. There's a balance to it, and there's a way of fully taking what's needed and filtering it through yourself and getting to the results that you need. But it's also important not to just blindly follow things. And the problem with this is the why, I think, as it's showing in the documentary, how cults can work and how methodologies in situations like this work, is they can feed off of the really lost or weak or vulnerable people. And I can see that in some of the business training or sales training books that I have, not only about how they're telling you to sell or how to negotiate or how to manipulate kind of things, but also in how they would sell it to you and present it to you. And there's definitely some of that fundamental strength, and it made sense. It's like you have to spend money to make money. You have to take a risk. You have to bet on yourself. I agree with all those principles. However, for me and for a lot of people, and social media is really interesting because you can read different comments and you can see different people's reaction. And like, they don't have anything. They're spending $100 on a webinar to go over different things that are going to 10x your business. Well, they don't have the infrastructure or the starting point to really make that money. So for them, that $10, that $100 or whatever is food for the week, is gas for the week, is diapers for their baby that they don't get to see because the mother has custody. So, but it's like a lottery ticket. because they want to think that by buying this, by using this, it's going to lead to those things. And there's a huge possibility it can. And that's why it becomes so misleading and so alluring, because you see the success of it. And the principles and the mindset that you get from that, it's really, I totally buy into that and I believe that. But I do think there are certain limits, and you have to understand what risks you can take and what risks you really can't take. And the problem is, a lot of people that are drawn to it, or majority of it, are lack the self-identity or lack the direction to know that limit or know how to not be fully enveloped into something. So the first couple episodes were about explaining the Nexium platform and their learning, and it's told by a couple of the members that were kind of realized at some point 7 years, 10 years into it, that there was becoming, or they were exposed to another level of the situation that was a lot more sinister than they had realized. It's all the good parts of it, all the learning and the growing and the teaching, and they were charged a lot of ways as far as recruiting members, and then in building up the business of it, because it's a business, because you're making a lot of money charging people for courses or having these intensives that they call them, and you get different levels and all this crazy stuff that's different than that's kind of where the self-help business stuff stops. It's not what I've seen anyway. It's not really developed into a video game kind of strategy if you can get different levels and get different benefits by being at a better level of taking the most courses. That's kind of a Scientology structure more than a self-help business learning training structure. So it's a husband and wife team that really the first couple episodes are focused on, as they're becoming aware of some of the underbelly or things that just don't make sense or doesn't resonate as correct or more evil, or I guess, or more, there's something that just, even though they can't quite pinpoint it, it's just something like, this is wrong, like a sense of alarm. The third episode, which I just finished watching, is about another member who was one of the big salespeople or the people recruiters into Nexium. And what we learn is a little bit more into what the next few episodes are going to be about, and really what the scandal was or is from the whole situation, which is there's a separate pyramid scheme section to the Nexium group where they're recruiting girls, and it's supposed to be like a girl retreat. Like they kind of put it to like, this is a girl version of Freemasons or something, is one of the quotes, which was interesting. But what it's becoming, and it's not all clear, and I don't know all the answers yet, but in this third episode, it's becoming kind of like a sex cult, where they have to be branded with the initials of Keith, and also Allison Mack, who's one of the head people involved in this as well. And they have to have collateral, is what they call it, so it's like a secret vow they have to take to be part of this group, and different levels of education or but they're calling the people above you masters, and then you're a slave, and then your job is to get 7 slaves below you, and then they get, so you have a chain of command for that, but they also call them slaves and masters. And when you see a phone conversation that they play with this girl's like, well, that was all, because this is one of her best friends that she grew up with in the group, because they've been doing this for a decade or close to a decade on most of them. And this is one of her best friends, or at her, it was at her wedding, was her best maid at her wedding. And it's crazy. It's crazy how they hear this conversation. And she's like, well, that was all a metaphor. Being slaves and masters were all a metaphor. And silence on the other end, where she's like, no, it wasn't. That wasn't the point. It was never a metaphor. I consider this I'm your master, you're my slave, this is legit. And part of what they also talk about in the Nexium courses, as far as the self-improvement is concerned, is you see these little things scattered along there that if you're looking for them, you can see that part of what they're putting in place is being able to manipulate people and put different things of manipulation, where if you question something, they can just turn it around. It's like, oh, well, you need to do this to clarify your mind, which is centering you back to what they want you to think, what they want you to believe, what they want you to do. So it was very fascinating, and then that's kind of how the episode ended, with you understanding the branding. One of the women who was the head recruiter of it, she got branded, and she kind of wasn't thinking clearly, or it's just weird when you get caught up in a cult kind of idealism, or the momentum, or just a belief in something that you can't quite have clarity in your head about why you're doing something, because you just are trusting people around you, that you trust them so blindly that you have there's no footing that you have, there's no foundation to resist or go against it. And when she realized it, and when she kind of told her husband, was the big thing about the branding, is she had a lower stomach. She had a brand of this guy's initials, and Keith's initials and Alice Mack's initials. And he obviously flipped out about it, because that's, what the heck are you doing? And that exposed her, and her kind of trying like, oh shoot, I got to undo a lot of what I've done. This is not okay. And that's, I think we're going to get really into some of the meat and potatoes of what was going on with this. And in the first couple episodes where you saw some of the mind manipulation in place, but it really was just about this course and about this group of people that got together for self-improvement with like-minded ideas, that had a really desire to get better and be better. And yes, you could see they're lost, and they're kind of looking for something to believe in, and something to get them to a better spot. But the first couple episodes really just painted a picture of this group that was helping everybody. And then knowing the end game, and knowing what this episode, the end of the second episode leading into this episode, put it on a platter of what's going to happen. Because even through all this, you're still this main couple, Mark, and who was a documentary filmmaker before then. I think he's involved in what's happening now, obviously. And it just showing the cracks, even though they're explaining all the good parts of everything. Fascinating documentary. It kind of sucks you in, and it kind of which I guess is kind of a metaphor, or the idea of it, because of the way the course is. Because you're kind of listening to it, you're like, yeah, but then you kind of get you a little bit more underneath your skin in a very subtle, at least for me, in a very subtle way. It kind of penetrates your skin. And then when you turn it off, you're kind of thinking about it a little bit, and it kind of gives you like the shivers of like the creepiness of it, or the craziness of it. And you're like, at first you're mad at like how these people are so easily manipulated or easily taken advantage of, but then you kind of see the hope and the improvement from the methods that they're getting, and the connection with these people that they're relating to. And then it becomes so hard to detach yourself from that. Because one of the lines, one of the directors, the main guy that became out of the group in the first couple episodes, said, well, he was really close with the founder, which is this guy named Keith, and he said, to believe that Keith was, I'm paraphrasing, but so basically it's like, to believe that Keith had bad intentions or was doing something wrong was to destroy my entire self-identity. Because his identity was so wrapped up into the teachings of something. It reminds me of like a religion. Like you can't, or a political party, or like you're wrapped up so much in belief in something. Like it becomes a belief that you don't have any objectivity or logicalness when trying to reach something. And it takes a long time to rip you away from that, or a lot of evidence to pile up to make you see the damages of what's happening. And I thought that was fascinating in a lot of ways, because you see different parts of things, and you see, and just not even in this particular Nexium self-help idea, and how it turns into a sex cult, which is the next couple episodes going to be crazy as I get into how that really worked. But you see that in a lot of different phases in your life. And for me, that's kind of what I'm not very much like that, but there are times that I will blindly follow certain people if they strike the right chord. And this is kind of reiterating to me, it's like, don't be stupid. Just don't be stupid. If something's too good to be true, it probably is. And be very careful and always be aware of, and that's hard because these people are looking for identity. And it helps you find identity. And so it's hard to say, don't seek out improvement, don't seek out religion, don't seek out this or that until you have that, until you have identity, before you have the structure and discipline in your life, because this is designed specifically to help you there, to help you get to that point. And I think that's a huge, huge value to get there, because it's hard. Even when you think you have it all figured out, to have that continual training and improvement and have that kind of a mentor or a guide or a system that's already proven that works in place is. So I don't know where the balance is for that. And that's something I've certainly been thinking about watching this and watching it kind of deteriorate into something that is really helpful and really positive to something that's so destructive and so human trafficking, basically. So the next couple episodes really interesting. I'm glad I got involved in it and watching it. Thank you for sticking around for 16 minutes here. My name is Andrew Worcester. Have a great day.